I'm running good to go.
I want to start with some comments this morning. Are you saying that Trump is going to supply weapons to Europe and then supply them to Ukraine?
No, but what I'm saying is this, that we have to make sure that Ukraine can negotiate from a position of strength, and we have to prop them up. And if the US would decide to do more in terms of weapons support, I'm convinced that they will also ask the Europeans to pay more. And that's only logical, because we are close to Ukraine and we have to.
So who is going to pay? It's already the case that Eastern European Baltic states are probably paying their fair share of the NATO. How are you going to convince France and Germany and the UK to pay up?
Oh, I'm convinced the US will do this, and I will help them, because if they would, and what I hope, will keep on supplying Ukraine with, for example, the sanctions today announced by Trump. I was very happy with that. But also if they would decide to keep on rolling the military equipment into Ukraine, because Putin is not coming to the negotiating table, then it is only fair that Europe will, in terms of the financial burden of those deliveries, will pay the highest burden.
And you have confidence in the internal politics of Germany or France and the UK right now that they can spend?
There is no alternative. There is no alternative, because if Ukraine loses this, and we need the US here urgently to keep helping us collectively to make sure that Ukraine can get to the position of strength, and that Putin will come to the negotiating table, exactly as President Trump said yesterday when he announced the new sanctions package on Ukraine. And I really am happy that he did this, and I hope the Europeans will back that up. But if Ukraine would lose this, we are in real big difficulty in the whole of NATO. And we have to spend more on defense, but then you're really not talking about 3, 4 or 5%. You are talking about billions, you would talk about trillions to restore our deterrence. So we have to make sure that Ukraine prevails.
Okay, I want to talk about, Zelensky was talking about 200,000 peacekeeping troops as part of any kind of deal that would be done in Ukraine. Is that possible?
You know, the problem I have with all these discussions about peace deals is that we are making the Russians much more informed, and we need to do that. We have to sit with them at the table. But having these negotiations amongst ourselves about yes or no NATO, yes or not giving up on territory, yes or not this, yes or not that, it's only informing Putin. So let's keep our cards close to our chest, make sure that Ukraine is in a position of maximum strength to indeed start those talks. But please, let's not do it out in the open.
Okay, so let's go through that. You said we're going to hold Putin accountable. We've got to make sure we're getting him to talk. Have you, you talked about the sanctions, right? You're confident those sanctions Trump is going to use as leverage, is that correct?
That will have a huge impact. And the reason is this. At this moment, Putin has two problems. One, he is spending 1/3 of his budget on defense. By the way, it should make us think that we have to spend much more here, but that's a different debate, but we have to. But secondly, his economy is in difficult position, is not doing well. And these American sanctions will be effective. And if we in Europe could prop them up, basically work in conjunction, they will be even more effective.
Take over the country of Greenland. Isn't that a conflict? Does it not set up a conflict with what you're trying to get Putin not to do?
You know what he said? He said we have to make sure that we spend our thinking, strategizing on the Arctic. This is Greenland, also Iceland, Norway, Canada, this is the US itself. Collectively we think about the Arctic because Russia is getting its act together. We are lacking enough icebreakers, for example, another issue Trump raised previously, and he is right there. Because the Arctic, for its natural resources, but also because of the fact that many of these seas will basically be sailable in the future, is of huge geopolitical interest and strategic interest. This is what he's putting on the table, and I was very happy with Mette Frederiksen, the Prime Minister of Denmark, dialoguing with Trump on how best to deal with this.
Will you be going to Greenland with Trump to sort of see this further? I mean, where do these talks go next?
Well, let's see. But I think what I'm seeing now is that Finland, Norway, others, because Finland is a big supplier of icebreakers, all of these countries, including the US, are discussing and dialoguing how to make sure that we have a holistic strategy on the Arctic and that we fend off the Russians and the Chinese.
And you do not worry about Greenland becoming pawn just in a US-China war? I mean, that is something that isn't a concern to NATO.
No, he didn't say that he is going to invade Greenland. Nobody said that. What he said is we have to make sure that the Arctic is of a huge geopolitical interest and we have to get our act together. And clearly he is right here, and I know that he has on this the support of Mette Frederiksen and others.
Okay, I want to ask you a big picture question. You're at Davos. Trump isn't here, but his address is later today, and certainly his spirit is here at WEF. Do you think these kind of multilateral geopolitical forums have something to offer the world? Like, is NATO capable of joining together, or where does the word dialogue come in right now with the new Trump?
The problem is, for me, is this: these, let's say, multilateral institutions are not an aim in themselves. NATO is there because collectively we can protect NATO territory. And Trump is right, that means that we all have to pay the same amount of money. And at this moment in Europe we are not paying enough. So he's right there. And that is not making NATO stronger if we would not ramp up defense spending also on the European side. And we are doing this thanks to Trump in his first term. And collectively we have to do even more. So the issue here is you have to be relevant. NATO is relevant today. But in 4 or 5 years, if we do not spend more, we cannot protect ourselves. So we will become irrelevant. That's why we have to spend more, produce more, also in the US, by the way, in terms of industrial output, to make sure that collectively we are as strong as possible.
Okay, one last question. Trump has made clear his intentions on diversity programs in his own workforce. NATO is an employer. You also have military. Are you considering or working, do you think that there will be rollbacks in the military in other places in the world for federal governments in terms of women and diversity programs?
Well, this is not something, this is for the allies to decide on. So the US can decide this. This is not something NATO is involved in. NATO is involved in the collective defense, making sure that collectively the 32 can confront any foe, any enemy, any adversary, and make sure that he or she will never try to capture a square kilometer of NATO territory. That's what NATO is involved in, and all the other stuff is up to individual allies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Great.